Tomatoes are at the center of human nutrition. They are palatable, juicy, and especially in summer they are often on our plates. But can we share this superb fruit with our dogs? The right answer is yes and no. Of course, dogs can absolutely have the tomato fruit. If you want to give them small amounts on the fleshy parts of a fresh red fruit won't hurt them, but dogs should never eat tomato leaves, stems, and green, unripe tomatoes, either. The majority of dogs want to eat whatever we're eating, regardless of what it is. Your dog wants to help you finish whatever you're eating, whether it's a juicy beefsteak tomato or a juicy beefsteak. Vets generally do not recommend feeding table scraps to dogs, but some foods are fine to give as a treat every now and then. Tomatoes are one of these, as long as owners are aware of the risks. Tomatoes are in the nightshade family of vegetables, which means the plants contain a few components that are harmful to certain animals, including solanine. Solanine, a substance found in the stem and leaves of the tomato and related plants, is harmful to dogs in large quantities. Luckily for dogs that enjoy the occasional tomato, solanine is mostly concentrated in the green parts of the tomato plant. Anyway, ripe tomatoes contain such a small and trifling amount of tomatine, we can consider it non-significant. Unripe tomatoes contain more tomatine, but we can find the highest concentration in the tomato plant itself, leaves, stalk, stems, and flowers. Avoid tomato plants and unripe tomatoes. Tomato plants, the stems, roots, and leaves, contain significantly more tomatine than the fruit, so if your dog eats any of the plants you're growing, they're at a much greater risk of poisoning. Likewise, unripe tomatoes also contain more tomatine than ripe ones, though still a small amount. In reality, most dogs would have to eat a lot of unripe tomatoes and plants, then consuming your entire tomato garden, to suffer from tomatine poisoning. They'd likely suffer stomach upset from eating so much fiber and natural sugars long before they reached a high enough dose to become poison, says Dr. Woodnut. Still, it's best to keep your dog and tomato plants separated if you suspect he could munch on them when no one's watching. Signs of tomato poisoning in dogs. Tomato poisoning symptoms, only likely to occur in dogs that eat the whole plant, many plants, or unripe fruit, include lethargy, drooling, weakness, tremors, lack of coordination, uncontrollable heartbeat. If your dog has consumed the green parts of a tomato plant, watch him carefully for signs of tomatine poisoning. Clinical signs of too much tomatine include gastrointestinal upset, cardiac effects, loss of coordination, muscle weakness, tremors, seizures. The good news is that these symptoms are rare, and the prognosis for dogs with tomatine poisoning is generally good. Call your vet if your dog exhibits these signs, as they can be a symptom of other serious health problems in addition to tomatine consumption. So, can dogs eat tomatoes? The answer is both yes and no. Ripe tomatoes are considered non-toxic to dogs and can be fed in moderation as an occasional snack. Unripe tomatoes and tomato plants, on the other hand, should be avoided. It is probably a good idea to keep dogs away from tomato plants, either by fencing off your garden area or by supervising your dog carefully in the garden. Both your dog and your tomatoes will thank you. What to do if your dog eats unripe tomatoes or tomato plants? Unless you have a very small dog, 15 pounds or smaller, it's unlikely that even several unripe tomatoes or a couple of leaves will cause a problem, says Dr. Woodnut. If you do find your dog eating tomato plants or unripe tomatoes, you should make sure they cannot eat any more by creating a barrier to keep plants off limits. Dr. Woodnut says, if your dog is very young, very old, or very small, it's worth calling your vet for their advice. Otherwise, it's usually safe to simply observe your dog for 48 hours and call your vet if you notice any unusual symptoms. Cooked tomatoes. Cooked tomatoes or sauces made from tomatoes may be safe for your dog to eat, but you should make sure that they haven't been cooked with other toxins. Avoid garlic and onion, which are commonly added to sauces, or cooked food seasoned with spices, like salt and pepper, which could give your pup an upset stomach. Health benefits for dogs. Since we know tomatoes are not poisonous to dogs, it's natural to wonder whether they offer any health benefits. Tomatoes can absolutely be good for dogs, which is why so many pet food manufacturers use them in their formulas. Tomatoes have lots of soluble and insoluble fiber. The pomace form has more fiber than whole tomatoes since the liquid is removed from the pomace, leaving behind only the fibrous parts of the fruit. Fiber helps to support healthy digestion and maintain your dog's steady blood sugar levels. Tomatoes also contain antioxidants and several important vitamins and minerals, like potassium, vitamin C and vitamin K. The amount of these nutrients in the tomato or tomato pomace will depend heavily on the quality of the fruit. Improved cardiovascular health. Tomatoes also contain high levels of potassium, a mineral known for regulating cholesterol and blood pressure levels, stabilizing neural function, and regulating blood sugar. Tomatoes are also abundant in iron, which plays an essential role in healthy blood circulation, vitamin K, a fat-soluble vitamin that helps clot the blood, as well as soluble fiber which promotes healthy digestion and regular bowel movements. How often you should give tomatoes to your dog? If your vet tells you it's okay to serve tomatoes to your dog, make sure you choose ripe, red ones that have the stems, leaves, and vines removed. Serve them to your dog fresh without any additives like salt, as these can be harmful to dogs. Make sure you know the source of the tomatoes too, so you can avoid pesticides and herbicides that can make your dog sick. If you serve your dog a tomato-based product like sauce or soup, check the ingredients for anything that can hurt your dog. It's best to stick to fresh tomatoes that you prepare yourself, just to be safe. A few other things to consider. If your dog is around garden tomatoes or you give him a bite of a ripe tomato, make sure they don't have fertilizer or pesticides on them. This could make the tomatoes more dangerous and make your dog sick. And of course, remember that while fully ripe tomatoes are safe for your dog to eat, they should only be given as an occasional treat and are not a substitute for a properly balanced diet. As always, consult your veterinarian before adding any new foods to your dog's diet. So, tomatoes are not poisonous to dogs and can absolutely be good for our furry friends. In fact, a lot of pet food manufacturers use them in their formulas because they are rich in nutrients that are good if consumed in appropriate quantities. They're low in calories and high in soluble and insoluble fiber, which is good for digestion. In tomatoes we can find lycopene, which promotes strong bones and may reduce the risk of heart disease, beta-carotene, which is very important for cognition. They also have minerals such as folate and potassium, which help with nucleoprotein synthesis, homocysteine metabolism, cellular division, neural development, and the synthesis of neurotransmitters. In our houses we can also easily find products that contain tomatoes such as soups and sauces. They often contain salt, sugar, artificial flavors, or other ingredients that are unhealthy for your dogs. Please avoid giving your dog these products. I'm sure your vet agrees. In conclusion, ripe tomatoes are generally considered safe for dogs but has to be fed in moderation. Unripe tomatoes and tomato plants and parts has to be absolutely avoided. If you enjoyed this video, kindly press the like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe with notifications on, so that you don't miss out on videos like this. Thank you for watching.